Hello, Year 3, and welcome to Tuesday's maths lesson. So, we are carrying on from yesterday's lesson. So, yesterday we compared fractions with the same denominator. We did. So, when the denominator, so the number at the bottom of the fraction, they were the same, we discovered that when the numerator is the smallest number, that is the smallest fraction, and when the numerator was the biggest number, that was the biggest fraction. And we were comparing them using our greater than, our less than, and our equal sign. So today we are going to do something very, very similar, and the lesson is structured very, almost the same, but today we aren't comparing fractions with the same denominator, we are comparing unit fractions. And to be able to do that, we need to know what a unit fraction is. Now, I know you did it in your lesson last week with Mrs. Pledger. So, if you can tell me now, or a grown-up in the room, can you tell me what a unit fraction is? So, hopefully you told me that a unit fraction is when the numerator is 1. Absolutely. So if the numerator, the number at the top is 1, that means it is a unit fraction. So it's only one part of the equal parts it's split into that you are looking at. Okay, so 1/2 is a unit fraction, 1/3 is a unit fraction, 1/4 is a unit fraction, and so on. So it's got a 1 as its numerator. Well, if you know that, you'll be brilliant at today's lesson. So looking at these fractions then, do you remember what we call this fraction? 1/3, brilliant. What do we call this fraction? 1/2. And what do we call this fraction? 1/4. Fantastic. And the denominator tells us how many parts the whole is split into, how many equal parts. So, for example, this, I think they're meant to be squares, but they look like they stretched into rectangles. So I'm going to say square, even though it does look a little bit like a rectangle now. But this square has been split into 3 equal parts. So 1, 2, 3. And we're only looking at one of those equal parts. That's why our numerator is 1. This square is split into 2 equal parts. That's why our denominator is 2. And we are only looking at one of those. It's red. So the numerator is 1. And then this square, this whole, has been split into 4 equal parts. And only one of those parts are red. We're only looking at 1. So our numerator is 1. Fantastic. So, looking at these then, could you tell me which fraction you think is the smallest? Brilliant. Well, hopefully you told me that the smallest fraction is actually 1/4. So if you had a sandwich, and then half again, one of those pieces will be your quarter. Now, we learnt last week that 2/4 is the same as 1/2, isn't it? So 1/4 is actually half of that half. So it is a smaller piece of the whole. So it's the smallest fraction. Which fraction is the biggest then? Hopefully you told me it is 1/2. It is only split into 2 equal parts. So they are bigger pieces, aren't they? Compared to these 4 equal parts and compared to these 3 equal parts. The more you cut the sandwiches up into equal parts, the smaller those equal parts will be, won't they? So the less we split the whole into, the bigger the equal parts will be. So our half is the biggest. Now we know that from looking at these pictures, don't we? Looking at these representations, the red part that we're looking at, the half is actually bigger, isn't it? That is a bigger part than that part here and that part here. It is bigger. They're exactly the same whole, exactly the same size square, but the red part that we're looking at, the one part of those equal parts, the half part is much, much bigger compared to the quarter, because we know that 2 of those quarters make up the half. How can you tell from looking at the written fractions that a quarter is the smallest and half is the biggest? How can you tell So hopefully you can spot that 4 is the biggest number, isn't it? 2, 3 and 4. 4 we know is larger than 2 and 3. That tells us that we have split the whole into 4 equal parts. So in this instance, when we're looking at unit fractions, when the denominator is the largest number, that is the smallest fraction. And therefore, when the number is the smallest, so when the denominator is the smallest number when comparing, so 2 is smaller than 3 and 4, 1/2 is actually the largest fraction. Now, that's a little bit different to what we learned about yesterday, because yesterday, when we were looking at fractions that have the same denominator, so for example, 2/8 and 5/8, which one is the largest? It's 5/8, isn't it? Because they both have exactly the same equal parts, but this one has more of them. We are looking at 5 of those 8 equal parts, but here we've only got 2 of those 8 equal parts. Do you remember when we shared those sweets with Wolfie the bear? You would get more sweets if you ate 5 of the 8 compared to when you ate 2 of the 8. So here we were looking at when the numerator is bigger, the fraction is bigger. But with unit fractions, all the numerators are the same, but we need to remember that if the denominator is bigger, the fraction is smaller because they are split into more equal parts. You are splitting that cake up. Lots and lots of the parts are smaller. But if you are just cutting it in half, that half of that cake is loads. You wouldn't be able to eat half of a whole chocolate cake, would you? You may be able to eat 1/6 of a chocolate cake because that is smaller. Okay, so it's quite tricky to get your head around, but hopefully looking at the visual representations, this will help you get the hang of it. Okay, but just remember that for today, when we're looking at unit fractions, when the numerator is 1, when the denominator is smaller, the fraction is bigger, but when the denominator is bigger, the fraction is smaller. So it's like the opposite. Okay, then, so today we're going to use our greater than, our less than, and our equals to signs. Remember, our crocodiles are hungry crocodiles, and they want to eat the biggest number. So their open mouth is always facing the largest fraction. And then equals to is when they're both exactly the same. So looking at this then, we've got 1/4 and we've got 1/2. Filling in the correct symbol, so pop the correct symbol you think that should be in there. I want you to tell me which is the largest and which is the smallest using the correct symbol. And then I want you to explain to me or a grown-up in the room why it's the largest or the smallest fraction. Using what I just explained to you then, can you explain to me why that is the largest or the smallest fraction? So hopefully you told me this. So remember, we read from left to right, just like how we read a book. So this is telling me that 1/4 is less than 1/2. Now, we know 4 is actually bigger than 2, don't we? 4 is actually bigger than 2, but we're not looking at just the numbers today. We are looking at the fraction. So even though 4 is bigger than 2, 1/4 is less than 1/2, because when you look at this, say this is a chocolate cake and you've cut it in half and then half again, you are only getting this quarter. But if you just cut it in half, you'll get a lot more cake here compared to you eating 1/4. You'd actually get double the amount of cake if you ate this half here compared to this quarter here. So you can see that the yellow part of this section, this 1/2, is bigger than this 1/4. And we know that because of the denominator 2 is smaller than the denominator 4. And that tells us that that is a larger fraction. So 1/4 is less than 1/2. Okay then. So I want you to have a little go at this do it then for me. So it's the same thing again. You are going to compare 1/8 and 1/10. And here's the visual representation underneath to help you. And then you're going to compare 1/10 and 1/4 using the less than, the greater than, and the equal sign. Okay, so pause this video now and have a go at filling in the correct symbol. Okay then, well, hopefully you said that 1/8 is greater than 1/10. We can see this because 1/10, the whole is split into 10 equal parts, isn't it? But this whole is only split into 8 equal parts. So that tells us that this 1/8 is bigger than this 1/10, isn't it? 8 is smaller than 10, so 1/8 is the largest fraction. That 1/8 of that whole is bigger than the 1/10 of that whole, because that's been split into more parts. Okay then, what about this one then? 1/10 is less than 1/4. This whole has been split into tenths, so there's our 1/10 there. But this whole has been split into quarters. So that is a quarter there. That quarter is much bigger than that tenth because that's only been split up 4 times. This has been split up 10 times. So we know that 1/4 is larger than a tenth, don't we? Fantastic. If you got those right, brilliant stuff. Okay, I want you to have another go then, having exactly the same thing again. Compare 1/9 to 1/11. And then 1/11 to 1/6. But this time, it's a little bit tricky because it doesn't actually show us the fraction. So perhaps you want to write the fraction above it to help you. Pause this video now and have a go at that. Okay then, well, hopefully you've written the fraction out to help you as you're working out. So I've written it out on top. 1/9 I know is 1/9. I know 9 is my denominator and we are looking at unit fractions, so 1 is my numerator. So 1/9 and 1/11. So this circle has been split into 9 equal parts. This circle has been split into 11 equal parts. That 1/9 is bigger than that 1/11, isn't it? 1/9 is larger than 1/11. It's greater than, because this circle has been split into more parts, hasn't it? So all of those parts are smaller than these 9 parts because they've been split up even more. Okay, and we know that 9 is smaller than 11, so 1/9 is larger, so it's greater than 1/11. Okay, what about 1/11 compared to 1/6 then? I've written 1/6 above the 1/6, so it's the fraction form, 1/6, because 6 is our denominator. It's been split into 6 parts, and we have shaded only one of those parts in. So, looking at this then, 1/11 is smaller than 1/6. This circle's been split into 11 pieces. This has been split into 6 equal pieces. That 6 is a lot bigger than that 1/11, isn't it? Because it's been split up into less equal parts, okay? 11 is greater than 6. So we know that this has been split into more parts, so it is smaller as a fraction. 1/11 is less than 1/6, okay? Looking at this, you can see that the shaded part, the 1/6 is much bigger than that 11th, isn't it? Think of it like a cake. You'd rather have only share your cake with 6 people than share it with 11 people because you would get less cake. It is a smaller fraction. Okay then, so today you're going to have a little go at the secure it. You are going to, it's similar to the one yesterday, isn't it? So you are going to replace, instead of A and B this time, it's B and C. So you've got 1, 2, 3, and 8. And you are going to find the fraction that will replace B and C to make it a fraction. Remember, we are looking at unit fractions today. So B will be 1, won't it? Because unit fractions only have 1 on the top. It won't be a unit fraction if it doesn't have 1 on the top. So you're going to see what the denominator would be out of 1, 2, 3, and 8, which will make 1/6 greater than that fraction. Remember, 1/6 must be greater than that fraction for this to make sense, for this comparison to make sense. So I want you to have a go at that. And your deepen it today is similar to the one yesterday. Sin is sharing a chocolate bar with her friends. She says, if I eat 1/12 of the chocolate, I will have less left for my friends than if I eat 1/8, because 12 is more than 8. I'm going to repeat that. If I eat 1/12 of the chocolate, I will have less left for my friends than if I eat 1/8, because 12 is more than 8. Is she correct? Is her explanation correct? You're going to need to explain to me why she is correct. You can draw a picture to help you. Remember, you can write out your written fraction. If I eat 1/12, well, what does that look like as a fraction? 1 over what? And then she'll have less. Remember, use your sign. So she thinks you'll have less than if she ate 1/8. Oh, what does that fraction look like? So write it out for me. And you can also draw it and split it up, or you can use your blocks to help you, or your Lego, or anything at home, or your sweets like I did yesterday. So yeah, have a go at that and explain it to me. Tell me that she is correct because, or she is incorrect because, and really explain how you know using what we have learned in today's lesson. Okay, so have a go at that. I hope that all makes sense, and I hope you've enjoyed it, and we'll go on to continue fractions tomorrow. Okay.